Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video. Hope you guys are doing well today. And I'm here to talk about. Tells did a video recently where he talked about the what's been discussed on things like Twitter and in Discords and forums all over the place at the moment, which is this idea of four DPS, one tank, M plus groups. And I just wanted to kind of talk about a couple of things with it, get some opinions from you guys and things like that. Um, if you aren't aware, I believe like it was a 28 or 29 quarter stars that's been done by a prop pally and 4 DPS. Now, I think it is quite restrictive in terms of what it has to have as the DPS. So, like enhancement chamois are absolutely pumping heals at the moment. So you're losing some kind of damage there in that they're having to spend Maelstrom on healing instead of DPS. You're then using like Druids for Nature's Vigil or Priests for Vampiric Embrace, that sort of thing, the off healing cooldowns, as well as a prop pally who just has absurd amounts of off healing. It is just insane. But it's one of those things that people are kind of discussing whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing. Is it something we want to see in WoW? And I wanted to talk about it from the perspective of someone who's not in the pro scene, who's not doing like 25 plus M plus keys and the really high end of players. I wanted to talk about as the average player and how is this likely to impact us? Now, I've already seen today, I've joined a M plus group, and they said, should we just go no healer and see what happens? And it's like, no, let's not do that. That's a horrible idea. So, in these really high keys, aside from the fact that mechanically they're going to take less damage, and that's because they're just not standing in as many mechanics, right? Um, they also have a good rotation of these cooldowns. They know what they're doing. They've obviously planned and worked around it, especially these groups that have been running one tank 4 DPS for a little while. And it's one of those things that you can't just throw that into a random group and expect it to work, right? And but it's already something that I'm starting to see impact pug groups. Pug groups now believe that one tank 4 DPS is a completely viable thing in like whatever their normal level of key is. And it really is one of those things that. So my first question is to you guys: what do you guys think about this? Is it something you guys have been affected by? And is it something you guys want to see in WoW? Now, I think it's if you look at the start of Dragonflight, we had some bosses that were just even with a healer, pure healing, they just weren't healable, right? So I'm thinking like Rage Tempest is a prime example, and that's something that Tattle speaks about in his video as well. Is that you have these certain bosses that are just were just so impossible to heal, and they're now being healed by DPS classes. They've had to nerf the healing checks that much, and it's not something we've really seen, or certainly not something I can remember being so prevalent in other expansions. But they seem to have really got the damage kind of wrong at the moment. And healers as a whole, their role has been for the longest time now interact with mechanics in terms of like explosive, in terms of grievous, in terms of just yeah, really, they're just all sorts, while maximizing the amount of damage they do and minimizing the amount of healing they do, which I think is something that has made the healer role strange in a way. I can't just queue as a healer and just worry about keeping my group alive anymore. That's a completely kind of hidden and taboo mindset of just I'm going to go into this dungeon or into this M plus or into this raid and just heal. I'm not going to do any DPS. I'm not going to kind of worry about defensives or externals. I'm just going to keep my group alive. I'm not going to do any of the mechanics. And it's something that if you had that mindset now, you'd probably get kicked from a group. Um, Whereas tanks were always seen as kind of the hard class to play in M plus. Certainly in the first couple of expansions of M plus, because well, they needed to not only tank, they had to hold threat, they had to mitigate mechanics, and they had to know routing. And that was seen as like, oh wow, they have to do all of that whilst tanking. That's pretty big. Whereas healers are expected now to do just all of these different things and more, to a point that people are making the decision to, like I said, bring a DPS over them. If the healing isn't what they're being brought for and you're bringing them for utility or mechanics or whatever, you may as well just bring a DPS that can do the same thing, right? And the other part to this is, and something that wasn't discussed in Tattle's video, but certainly something that I think is quite scary to think of, is we've recently put out a video talking about the what would happen if supports were added to WoW, and I think we're already seeing that effect. Imagine if instead of that one tank 4 DPS, it was one tank 3 DPS and a support. You could pretty much remove the healers entirely, and that would be a normal thing, especially if supports brought any level of off healing or shielding or whatever. So it is really something that could be quite unhealthy for the game if they allow it to get out of hand. Now, there's been a couple of different perspectives about this, about how to fix it. So, one of the ways that has been discussed is reduce prot pally healing on others, which is fine, but I still think it's a kind of hot fix to the issue. It isn't a direct fix. Um, you could have kind of a heal tax. So just in Mythic Plus, healers or DPS are doing, I don't know, maybe 80% effective healing to other members of the group, something like that. I don't know. Like you've got these things, but it does kind of kill the idea of having these off healing cooldowns. Then one thing that I've kind of thought about, and it would require, it certainly wouldn't be done in this expansion. It would have to be the next expansion. Is if they're really wanting to go down the route of kind of a support style role, is change the healers into a support. So what I mean by this is like have the healers bring more than just healing to a group, um, and kind of rework that role. At the moment, the role just doesn't seem healthy at all. So yeah, there's kind of a couple of things to think about there. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to think about this. Would you like to see healers really removed from the M plus meta? Would you like to see healers almost reworked? Are you a healer? What's your thoughts on this? And is it something that's impacted you? So lots of questions there. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to think around this. Me personally, I think healers not being in a group is unhealthy. I think the healer role in general probably does need some form of rework, whatever that looks like, and it probably won't be this expansion, let's face it. But yeah, so lots to think about there, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks for watching, and catch you later. Bye.